Alright guys, how are ya? Let's see, we're going to do DIY Anniversary Book Card Part 5. So right now we have almost all of the pages primed, and it's going to be about maybe, I don't know, we got 20 minutes of work time and some drying time, and then we'll be done with the actual priming. So what we have is some water and a paintbrush, and we're going to do a little bit more decoupaging. So we have our Mod Podge out, and then this page is going to be ripped paper. So we're going to layer that with Mod Podge and a lot of pieces of paper, and it's going to give it a texture for background. The book ends up being a little bit different. I had intended for this page to keep the textured paper look, but in the end I decided to use some of this fabric that I have, and it is rough denim and it's frayed on the edges. So I had a perfect piece. It was about the size of this page, and well, basically it covers most of the page. So I had already had it washed, and that's why I used it when I found it. But if you intended to make the fabric a little bit smaller, then you could still see the background with the textured paper afterwards. Same with the other side. I used a doily of sorts that had fall colored flowers on it, so it was embroidered, and that was really pretty. And so this section, this page is actually really easy to do. It's just ripped paper and some glue. And I left the top layer, well, I didn't put any glue on top of the paper, I just put it on the back sides of the ripped paper and layered so the whole background was covered. And it didn't take very long. So that's what's going on here. You can also use colored paper, but what I had here was the white paper, which worked really well for me. So that's about it with this. And so let's see. You can also use brown paper bag for this part. You can also use tissue paper or book paper. You could use a layer of stickers if there's a lot of stickers that you liked, or lined paper from a notebook, and they would all give you a slightly different look, but you really can just use any paper if you're going to branch out a little bit and try to make this a little bit more your own. But if you're comfortable with the look of this fall themed card, then you will really enjoy just following along with this pattern. So let's see. But if you had fabric that was smaller sized than these pages, you can use that and center it in the book, and then put your text on the fabric is what I did. But again, like I said, I just had fabric that was already frayed, which looked really good to me, and it worked really well. This part doesn't take too long. You're going to want to make sure that a lot of the glue isn't going to dry on top. There's not going to be a huge layer of glue on top. So take your towel and try to get that top layer of glue onto the towel and off of the paper. I wouldn't rub as much as press with the towel. Rubbing is going to ruin the work that you just did with the paper. Could move the paper around, or since the paper is wet, it could rip the paper. So dabbing and pressing is a lot better for this part of the book process. And you see that most of the pages are covered now. This last page is just going to need to be painted. These are book pages, and this part will have to dry for not too long. Mod Podge doesn't take too long, but while that is drying, you might be able to paint the next page white if it doesn't have a lot of glue on it. If it does, then I would suggest waiting until the glue is dried before turning the page so the pages don't stick together. And I've got my white paint here. That's the page we were talking about here, and then the next page is my last page, and I'm going to paint it white as a background. You may not need to do this if they are already white, a color of white. It doesn't have to be this white. But if it's already plain and white or cream, you could just go ahead and skip to coloring this page in a color. So I use orange, and that's what we're going to do next once this dries. I like the layers of paint. I like the thickness. I like just the process of going through each step. So this is like a primer. And so this step, although not completely necessary, is still a good step if you're working in layers and thickness and priming. So this part doesn't take very long. The drying of white paint is going to be only about anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour, and the layer isn't very thick, so it really won't take that long. And I like to keep my paint station clean, kind of organized, and I'll wash my hands a lot and clean up a lot along the way. Don't forget to change your paintbrush water frequently, so that's the drying time I'm pointing at, so that the water doesn't stay on the paintbrush, like the color doesn't stay on the paintbrush, which it could do. We have dried. Well, I'm pressing the pages to see if they're cold. Sometimes if they're too cold, that means that it's not dry enough. The binding isn't painted yet, but we're going to use paper and decoupage the outside, so that's going to be fine the way it is. We won't take any extra steps on that right now. And so those are all the primed pages. They're looking good. Okay, so let's paint something. Looks like we're going to go for an orange. I've got an orange out there on top of my workstation, and picking it up. I actually used 3 different oranges in this book. That first page I just showed you I actually changed later on. It was a trial and error, basically. So I go back and I paint it black after, and this is the second page. And I'm painting it in orange. You can add some nice sparkle to these pages. Some of my paint in this book has a little bit of glitter. It's a very light glitter. It's kind of gold and very fine. That's very nice for fall. Reminds you of the sunshine that you see through the leaves. And I'll use my finger a lot with little projects like this. It doesn't have to be perfect, and I like that. So that's why I'll use my finger. And I pour my paint into my cap of the paint bottle cap. I don't need a tray that way, and the extra paint just goes back into the bottle afterwards. This is the front page I was telling you about. And this page will have to dry as well, probably for another 15 minutes to an hour, depending on humidity and the thickness of the paint, and how touchable it is afterwards. So sometimes it can be messed up a little bit, just in a few of the thick spots. So maybe an hour is best sometimes, depending on how even you painted that paint, spread out that paint. And we're going to do one more page here. Another color. Got two of them. Some of them are a little bit more tan. So this is the third page in. And that's pretty much all it takes for this part. After this, I will be using a stencil to put on patterns in the background. It's the next layer, so you can have a pattern ready, you can make a pattern, you can buy a pattern. I like just going to the store and buying patterns, little stencils and stuff like that, like the ones you'd find on the wall. If you have any of those hanging out, you can find them at thrift stores sometimes even. Those work really well. So find a pattern that you like. I use a mandala pattern, just something that has a center, and you'll see that in the next couple of videos. I'll need black and white paint, so if you have that hanging around, pick that up. And that's it. So don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked this video. Thank you very much for watching. Love you. Bye.